Okay, I want to talk about the cockpit detailing we're going to do. So starting with the left wall, actually the panel's already installed. Let's see if I can shine a light in there. It's getting kind of late here and my lighting isn't probably as good as it could be. So let's just take a look here and see what we can do. Alright, so there's partial panel. That's most of the panel. There are two lower left and right switch boxes that still need to go in. The one on the right controls the aircraft lighting, and I think the one on the I have to look and see what the one on the left has on it. But that's the major portion of the control panel. As you can see in the middle, there's a notch there, and that's going to be for the that'll be for the gun sight. So now I'm working on the left side of the interior, and I'll turn this off now. Left side of the interior. So we've got it on the forward lower corner on the floor. The circuit breaker box goes. This is the breaker box. And then we have a throttle quadrant, and that's this unit here, which is tipping over. None of the control knobs are fixed yet. There's mixture, prop, throttle, and boost. The boost is on the back here. Throttle is the big angled lever there. And then prop and mixture. And then this is the flap control lever quadrant. So the only other thing I think that goes into that half of the fuselage, that side of the fuselage, is the trim actuator control unit. And that's just a small box with a couple of trim knobs sticking out of it. Kind of a large elevator trim roller, and then a dial for rudder trim. And that's that unit goes just to the left of the pilot's seat leg, his left leg, right below the knee. So that'll take care of the left half of the cockpit when I get that trim unit mechanism manufactured. Now that's just going to be a couple of small blocks, and then a couple of these slices off of the dowel rod. So we'll use thin slices of this with a razor saw. Actually, I'll use the larger diameter for the elevator trim wheel, and then this size for the rudder trim. And then we can start working on the right hand side, which has the oxygen regulator, the radios, the map bag or map box, and a couple of other little switch boxes. Okay, so anyway, I just want to show you how this would look, and the scale on these, I just went with what would fit. So using this as a reference, as a sort of a map, we can see where these parts and components will fit inside the cockpit, and then after that, and also using reference photos. Obviously, we're using reference pictures too. The breaker box was a pretty big unit. Above it here, right about here, there's a smaller switch panel, and then just behind that goes the throttle quadrant, and then just below that goes the flap controller quadrant, and then kind of below and forward of that is where the trim unit, actually behind the flap actuator. And there's also a landing gear actuator over there. That'll just be a lever kind of stuck out of the wall. What else? I guess that's where we're at. Probably one more layer of filler over the seam to try and eliminate as much of that as possible. I really want a clean sort of torpedo shape, and again, you know, that seems to be a common theme for the last 3 or 4 kits. The fuselage has been, I mean, pretty much a bullet or torpedo shape, and which is, I mean, makes sense, right? So as opposed to jets, which have a lot of intakes all over this, on either side, about mid fuselage, and there's a whole lot of kind of different aspects to some of the jet aircraft, and general aviation are not typically so rounded. They're like the Aranca, they can be more of a rectangular profile from the front, more of a squarish cross section than fighters and racers tend to be, for obvious reasons. Okay, so as I said, get the cockpit furnished. I just wanted to show a little bit of what that looks like. For most of the detail, for the little knobs, I buy these, I don't know what you call these, they're not really pins because they're too flexible, pretty bendy, but you buy these in packs of, I don't know, a couple hundred, very cheap, and just nip the heads off when I want a knob, and cut them into small sections when I want switches. And so they work for a lot of different application, and they're really cheap. But I suppose any round-headed pin would work. It's just these are a lot easier to cut because they're more malleable. They're not. It's not like trying to cut this stuff, which is quite hard. I can actually use my end nippers for this, but I use wire cutters to preserve my my end cutters, my little hand cutters. You don't want to chew up the blade on this, so I don't tend to use this for that job. Although I could, like I said, it's fine wire, and it's not hardened like the T-pins or like straight pins with the round head on them would be. Okay, so just a little catch up. This is where we're at. I'm working on getting the cockpit outfitted. Again, when that's done, I'll begin work on the wing. I have that diagram in front of me here. I've been looking over the landing gear and how we're going to do this. There's a separate page that shows the detail of a scale landing gear leg, and it talks about omitting most of this bend here, in fact all of it, which is what I want to do. I'm thinking, because of the way the landing gear doors are configured and because I want this to retract, I'm thinking about making these spring-loaded, and that way when I lift the airplane off the ground, the landing gear would extend, and that would allow the doors, both the upper and lower doors, to seat properly, to flatten. Without that feature, you have to overlay the skinny straight door over the larger landing gear door, and fix them in such a way that they wouldn't properly close when the gear was up. So as I'm pursuing retractable gear, I'm still figuring out how to make those doors work, or if I even can figure it out. I mean, if I don't get it worked out, I'll just fit it so that they clear each other and can slide past each other. But as far as when the gear is fully closed, I'm not sure how I can get that straight door to fall in flush. I'll have to, like I said, it's something I'm still looking at. Probably have to fool around with some mock-up and try to figure it out physically. Okay, but I guess this is what I'm talking about here. Here's the scale appearance of the landing gear. Here's the upper door I'm talking about, and how it overlays the large door, the big flat door that covers the wheel. And they need to be able to slide, and then in retraction, ideally, this would drop down beyond this point, and then when it closes, when the gear closes, this door would set in flush with this one. But I don't know if I'll be able to achieve that. But if I spring load this, it would unload when I pick the airplane up, would extend the gear out, and would possibly reach that point. It makes it trickier for cutting the landing gear bay. I have to make sure I get that the right length, not too long and not too short, obviously. So, one thing leads to another, as I say. And it's going to make it tricky, but I'm working on that. I'm going to try and get that. That's about it. I think you're caught up. So thanks for watching. I'll post this video soon. And as always, I appreciate everyone, taking the time to make comments or ask questions. Obviously, just help yourself to all that, and I'll do the best I can to answer as quick as I can. Thank you, and have a good night.